Grief is most associated with death, but really any loss can cause grief. The loss of a favorite toy or routine, as well as the loss of a house, change of school, or a change of certain family routines, can be very, very significant, especially when it comes to individuals with autism. Navigating these topics with our loved ones may seem very challenging to caregivers. You wonder how much information you should give or not give. You wonder what happens if you give too much information or too little information. We know that although conversations about loss may be difficult for them to take in at once, however, the confusion and anxiety brought about by unexplained changes may be even more detrimental to the individuals in the long term. Hello and welcome once more to another edition of Let's Give It a Voice here at the Voice of Hope Media with myself, AC Mbeng, as host. Today we are giving a voice to when autism grieves. Being autistic and having to cope with loss. It may be the loss of a loved one, it may be a divorce, it may be change of a house, it may be change of a routine, or just an autistic person's favorite toy that he or she has misplaced, or it may be the change of a school. You're welcome once more, and I'll bring onto you our guest speakers. So today we are going to look into when autism grieves, and we are going to cover the loss of a loved one. We are also going to look at grief as a result of a divorce or a separation in relationship. We are also going to look at grief when it comes to an illness, and also grief when it comes to when an autistic person has misplaced a favorite toy, or when his or her routine has been changed. So I'm going to introduce our guest speakers today. Eric, welcome once more, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Clarice, and thank you for inviting me for the program. My name is Eric Moore, and I'm very happy to share a relationship between autism and grief. And I think by the end of the program, all of us, including me, will have an opportunity to learn and be able to embrace autism and be able to manage grief. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, Ida, and thank you for joining us today.
Having me, Clarice. I am pleased to be on your panel today.
Thank you so much. So before we start, we are going to have a brief look at what exactly is grief and how it affects individuals with autism. Eric, I would like to start with you, but before we go into that, I just want to acknowledge those of you watching. You are watching live over at the Voice of Hope Media Facebook, and also on our YouTube channel, the Voice of Hope Media. And if you're watching, you will like to share and invite your friends to watch as well. Oftentimes we hear of grief, but whenever that word comes up, what comes into mind is the death of a loved one or when we are bereaved. For this episode today, we are going to look at autism and grief in terms of bereavement, in terms of in terms of the loss of a toy, or change of a routine, change of a school, or a separation in a relationship, etc., etc. So you're welcome once more. Eric, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm so happy that you're able to have this topic, something that we can discuss about. Talking about grief, to be honest with you, is not an area that is comfortable for anyone to talk about. The reason why I say anyone is because I've been able to approach a clinical psychologist, a counselor.
Yeah.
I've approached a speech and language therapist and an occupational therapist. to get their view about grief. And to be honest with you, there's a block. That is not something which they find it comfortable to talk about, or there is not something that they have actually explored, especially linking autism and grief. But when I have to look at grief, especially in the autism world, it is a very big area to explore. And I'll just bring it down to individuals that I've worked with. If before I continue, I just want to say hi to Lesra. I can hear his voice in the background. I know he's participating, and I'm so proud that he's participating in this particular area. So hi Lesra. I know you can hear me. So yeah, what I was just trying to say.
It's Ida's son. Lesra has gone out for
Oh, okay,
yeah,
no
Ida's
problem.
son.
Yes, no, I'm just happy that someone is there telling us that they're around and listening to us.
Yes.
When I look at this grief, I don't look at the definition. The reason is that very often, I said it in the last show, I hardly go with definition. I mostly go with examples of what happens, and then it brings out the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, if everybody, I'm so sorry, Clarice, if you want to actually know what grief is all about, I will just advise you to go to that. Yes, you just go to this. It's not because it's Clarice's show. It's not because we have this. We are privileged to have this in our house. My daughter, 7-year-old, she's reading it and she's actually moved by grief and how it can actually help somebody grow. So, and then the reason why, sorry, I'm not selling this book. The reason why this thing has been so touching to us in the house is because it is a life experience with live characters using real names. That's the magic word, using real names. So, but when I have to look at grief in the autistic world, it is a very big picture. The reason is I've worked with an adult with autism who is in his 50s, and every time he has every time he's having a difficult time, when he's kicking around, when he's hitting others and things like that. And when he calms down and you're asking him what's happening, he says, I'm missing my mom. And to find out when he lost the mom, it was 40 years ago.
Wow.
And it's constant. It's the only reason why he has a meltdown. The only reason you discover that no matter what is taking place, it ties to that. He always get back to that and say, oh, I'm missing my mom. And then you cannot start bringing that discussion because all of us are not trained to actually help him to understand grief. He wasn't helped 40 years ago. He has not been helped 30 years, 20, and now. So to get to decode that and to be able to support him effectively is very, very hard. And then I think the mind game, I will call it a mind game that we play very often, is to keep putting the positive side. She's in a better place. She's watching over you. As if we are talking to somebody who just understands better place, watching over you and things like that. But somehow it calms him down. But I'm still thinking that after this topic, after discussing or exploring on this particular area, a lot of us are going to understand what people with autism go through. When I'm looking at grief with autism, for me, it's rather than, Clarice just pointed that out, that rather than thinking that it's just the death of a loved one, I was talking to a counselor trying to get his view on this, and he looks at grief as a loss. The only reason why he joined counseling is because he had the loss that the girlfriend left him. And when he was going through that, he discovered that it's grief. The experience of grief, those stages of grief, he went through all that before he overcome that breakup. And that is why he was able to express himself to the best of his ability and his understanding of grief. Now, when I look at most of the young people, the individuals with autism I work with, when you look at the grief they experience, it's very often on a daily basis, and it's mostly to do with things they treasure, things they are obsessed about, things that they are close to, things that they hold it very close to their heart. And when grief comes in place is when they get to lose those toys, those things that they are close to, those things that they miss. And the last picture I'm going to point out is that I work with a young person who is also in his 40s. And what happened is that he has a favorite toy, a teddy bear, and this teddy bear got lost in the park. And we know the name of the teddy bear. We went and bought just the same teddy bear and said, "Oh, your teddy bear, we can't find your teddy bear. We have brought you this one." He was so happy to get this toy. But every time he's eating, he's saying that, "Oh, teddy bear is in the park, hungry." It means, in a way, he hasn't gone through grief. He hasn't gone through those stages of grief. He hasn't been able to take in that they have replaced my toy. Okay, for him, that one out there, which I love so much, is still out there. And in a way, it's suffering, because very often during mealtime, he'll be saying, "Oh, teddy bear, are you going to eat this rice? Do you like it spicy?" He is expressing himself externally to the teddy bear. They communicate all the time. And he had done that throughout his childhood, and he's in his 40s. Bringing him a new toy, did he change it? No, he didn't, because he just thought, "Yeah, you have brought me a new one. I'm happy to have this new one." But every time he relates every activity and points out that, "Oh, that one is out there not participating," which means he's still missing the loved one who is not around. I would like to end here, and as we explore further, then I'll have so many other things that we'll discuss about. Thank you very much for involving me in this particular discussion.
Thank you so much, Eric, and it's a pleasure for you agreeing to be part of this conversation, even though it was short notice to you, and I'm always grateful for that. Over to you, Ida.
For me, I'm a parent. I'm not a specialist in autism, but I'm a parent with a mom with twin boys with autism. They lost their father on the 22nd of November. When it happened, I couldn't sit them down and tell them, because I do not know how it's going to affect them. How are they going to take it? I was so nervous. I couldn't tell them. I'll just look at them and I will just have tears. But what I did is I contacted school and explained the situation to them and tell them if the psychologist at school could, break the news to them. And their schools were so supportive. They did so, and they updated me and said they did break the news, but they seems to be all right. Now, where the situation is with my children is they are nonverbal and they don't have high function. I'm not sure whether they have understand the situation. I'm not sure whether how they're gonna process it. Even though the news was, given to them by school. So it has put us in a very difficult situation. Social stories were written for them about it. I even take them to the church service. I take them to the funeral. And then they even attended the burial at the burial ground. For me, I thought that would at least, if they don't understand that, at least maybe they will make the connection. But still, to be honest, I do not know how their understanding is of them losing their dad. So it's very tough situation because of their lack of understanding. I still do not know if they understand what is that someone is never coming back, even though school have explained to them that they've gone to heaven and that they will not come back, and that. But that's where the problem lies, I think, with a lot of parents. So a lot of parents might relate to my situation. So, but I deal with it at home with them through understanding, because I notice sometimes they will write his name or they will touch his picture. So through that, I know that they are missing him, and I will just say, okay, maybe he's gone to heaven. kind of. Basically, that's the only way I could explain to them. So yeah, that's all I can say for now, Clarice.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Ida, and our condolences once more. I know we had already spoken, yes. So we are sending our hugs to your boys as well, and thank you so much for sharing that. It is often said that take away a special toy or something of
Yeah.
interest from an autistic individual and watch what their behavior is. I remember it also affected my son when we lost our baby in 2017. He each time he will point my tummy that the baby is still in my tummy, and then while in church on the day of the funeral, he he was so angry. He kept tearing papers off the walls in the church, crying, and a lot of meltdown. But it took us a while to realize that that was his own form of grief, and he wouldn't go to the cemetery. So autistic individuals they do grieve same as every other person, but in their own special way.
Different.
Sometimes us the
Mm.
caregivers, sometimes the every other person around may not understand that a certain behavior or something which they are doing may be as a result of the loss that they are going through, and that's the only way that they can grieve. So it's actually important for us to be able to understand some of the emotions that they portray and how they portray these emotions so as to be able to help them. So individuals with autism may have a hard time expressing their feelings or may express their feelings in a way that is unrecognizable to neurological caregivers or loved ones. So how does one therefore recognize that they are grieving? Eric?
Yeah. I would just like to say, in order to recognize that they are grieving, is just to see a pattern of how they express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You get to know from a pattern the way they express themselves in a particular situation. Um, I just met someone during the lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
Who is in the spectrum, and every time I meet him, he's saying that, oh, he's very frustrated because we can't go out because he wants to go and meet his lads, his friends, the boys, and he calls their names. And then one time that the father came to visit, I was telling him that really I want to make uh, I really want us to see if we can drive him towards where we can meet even one of the friends. Just let him just see him and have a. And when I called the names, the father just laughed and told me that those were his friends 22 years ago. And the way they separated, it was that those boys moved to another barrel. So it was just that break of people he was meeting every day. By the way, he had been with them from childhood in the same school.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, when they were turning into adults, they moved somewhere else.
Yeah.
So where he goes for his communal area now, the boys he calls his lads are not there. But we noticed that since those one left 22 years ago, every time that he's going to that center, he keeps saying that I'm going there to see my lads. I'm going there to see the boys. And then I just heard that one of the times even that they discovered that because he was talking about it too much, let them just invite these boys. That they invited the boys like 5 years ago, and they came for a gathering so that they can meet and see how they will connect. He didn't even recognize them. The picture he has of the lads are the pictures of 22 years ago. The ones that they brought to him now were different boys, lots of beards, different looks and stuff like that. But what I could pick from that is that when it comes to grieving, you discover that to identify that somebody is actually grieving, it is always a change in behavior. And the way you get that change in behavior, you have to connect it with an activity, what has happened or what has gone wrong or right. Looking at these ones that I've worked with, the only way that I know that it is grief, it is that very often, I was just reading through Clarice's book, and when you see the first, I think page 60, when she's talking about the different, the various stages of grief, and she mentions the first one as denial, you discover that once that one is not broken, it's very, very hard. Once you have not accepted that, it is very, very hard. And then with the individuals with autism, it is quite hard. It's quite a challenge because already before, when you have to just to define who they are, you start talking of a delay. They struggle to, which means it's actually a struggle for them to be able to accept, to be able to understand, and to be able to say yes, it happens. So it has to be a slow, slow process. Now, when you inform me that we should have this discussion, I actually wanted to do a lot of research. I actually speak to a therapist, or a speech and language therapist. The apology she made is that in the course of their study, they don't explore grief, which makes it very hard for them to actually help somebody who is grieving. I'm so happy that Madame Aida said she got some support from school, especially the social stories and things like that. That is really great. That is really great and wonderful. And I'm glad that the connection she made of introducing the boys to all the process during the burial, that will make a difference. I just want to assure you that don't think anything is lost. Every experience that they experience that day will make a lot of meaning in their life as they grow up. I'm just imagining if you did not expose them to that scenario, trust me, the experience would have been very, very different. So I was just thinking that very often the behaviors, with time, you discover that those boys will be very consoling. They'll always look at you. They'll always want them hugs. They'll always want to be close to you. In a way, they are going through the grieving process with you, and somehow they are trying to give the support they can give. Nothing lost. Most of them, especially those who are non-verbal, the way they express themselves is by their actions. And with time, you always identify when. I know that your boys, so definitely you know them. With time, you always identify how they're sharing with you in grief, how they are accepting it, and how they are moving on. However, the most difficult part is actually understanding what grief is, which, to be honest with you, I don't actually need to understand what grief is. What I have to know is how to deal with it. That, oh, some, because I just need to know that somebody has gone, that I have to move on, and that person is not here, right here and now. How I can live without that person. I think that's the best thing that we have to know. And what should be our focal point, especially working with individuals with autism, is to be able to identify that the main intention is not for them to actually understand what grief is, but it's actually to understand that they can have something and lose it. That something can be here now and it's not there. And then you see a transition because you plan them. Every time we plan them for transition, we plan them schemes for transition. Then you see the best scheme that we can put for them for a transition, so that as they are going through that transition, every network we have around them is working towards the same goal. So if you have a speech and language therapist, you have an occupational therapist, they should all be in the same boat or mindset. And when I say that, I mean, for instance, if a speech and language therapist put you a very good program of a social story, when an occupational therapist is working with the boys, let them be aware of that social story so that their language doesn't change. The problem is that the boys can be with an occupational therapist, and still the occupational therapist is teaching them how to say, daddy, daddy's at home. Making a sentence with that, daddy's at home, for a boy who knows that is the speech and language therapist has said that is gone. It changes the mind, it plays with their mindset. But once you have your team of staff working with these boys, they should be up to date with what is happening. Everything current should always just be building on that, because for them, everything that comes like a, a contrast confuses them the more. But if everybody's in the same place, I think it'll be very easy to accept it and then move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that. And it's very important identifying change in behavior and for the MDT team to be in the same boat, to be able to speak the same language as far as the individuals are concerned. It's very important. And let me not forget, thank you so much for mentioning grief to greet. That was that was a big surprise there. And Ida, over to you. How did you identify that the boys may be grieving?
Um, for them coming to me, writing, the name, the daddy,
Mhm.
or showing me a picture. When they do that, I know that their minds are on him. They're thinking about him.
Mhm.
Um, through the meltdown, because I'm not so sure, because we quite often have that one all the time. But for them, uh, writing daddy, or you know by touching his picture,
Okay.
so I know they are thinking of him,
Mhm.
because everybody does it differently, because maybe from time to time their mind will be on him, and they will just all of a sudden just write daddy. They don't say where is he, but they say daddy, or they will just touch the picture. So through that, I know they are thinking of him.
Okay.
Yes, but for them, as I said, because of the way their autism is, they so different ways. They don't say daddy and scream or cry or do all those things. But I know they missing him, and they're thinking of him from time to time. Yeah, it's very difficult to explain,
Yeah.
because I myself do not understand it. I don't get it. I'm learning every day. Uh, 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 Dealing with them is a learning process, no matter how long you've been with them, because things changes a lot of the times. So yeah, that's it. I didn't have much to say on that one apart from those things.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And each and every one of us, we do learn every day, especially with our children, because they grow, they develop. So and especially now they are adults. So there's definitely a difference from when they were still adolescents or when they were still children. So it's all a learning curve. So my next question is, how do we therefore educate about loss when loss is so unpredictable? Some of them, especially with the loss of a loved one, it's unpredictable. Sometimes you cannot foresee that this person will not be here tomorrow, but it sometimes you can predict other forms of losses. But how do we educate our individuals as far as this is concerned? Over to you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much. When I was discussing this, I don't always talk from my point of view. I always try to get the point of view of others, of
Hmm.
other people who are especially in the field as well.
Yeah.
When I was trying to explore how to support individuals with autism be able to understand what grief is all about and be able to learn how to deal with it. Um, I had a very good discussion with a professor at the university, and he was saying that that is the gap lacking, and the gap is lacking in when they are teaching what they call PSHE in schools. When that's a common language, a common subject like citizenship, which it
Hmm.
teaches us about common things, how to money, how to do banking, how to live your life. It should also be able to tell you how to cope with death.
Yeah.
However, most of the PSH which they teach these days is how to help children to use money, how to make them happy, how to deal with abuse and things like that. However, that the gap that is left is how to deal with grief, because he was saying that if from child if children are very from when children are very young, even if they are individuals with autism, if they're able to teach them about grief, that will be so good, because everything that they can grieve about, they should be able to get over it using those stages of grief. And because it is not taught, most people who started getting issues with grief are those who are seeking counseling. So you'll discover that a teenager when they find her not able to cope with stuff and she's mostly hidden or self-harming and things like that, when they discover that maybe it is because of a separation in the home, then they started helping to counsel that young person. However, if she was taught in school that, um, when there is a loss of a loved one, it is obvious that you go through this sign, and then they are aware of those signs, they'll be able to go through. For an individual with autism, if they start teaching them everything, teaching them how to hold the spoon, the knife, the forks, how to eat, how to interact, this social interaction, they have to also teach them how to experience the loss of a loved one. The loved one for them will be anything. The way for us, some people cry the loss of a car more than their mother. I'm sorry. Some people will cry a treasure, something that they have close to their heart more than human beings. I've seen so many people crying their pets more than their loved ones. So you will discover that that loss is quite strong. So when it comes to autism, we have to actually teach these individuals how to be able to deal with it the way we teach, the way we learn from counselors when we are already old. If they have it in school, in citizenship, or in PSHE, they tell them that, look, you go through these stages, you can get a loss of this. When you use the individuals with autism, you can actually have you can use as the most basic thing that can get lost. Somebody who is very close to his iPad, that iPad gets broken and you cannot get the new one here and now. I hope some of you understand what I'm talking about. It will be a huge loss, which it can lead to Third World War. So what I'm just saying is that when you have that type of a thing, if that person has been able to learn that, if you have this toy, you get it into the bin, they bin it, it's gone. When they are still babies, this baby, this bin, this is gone, and then you make it to know that, you can have another one, or it is not there, you have to look for something else. If you are building that type of character, because the mindset of children with autism is very slow in developing. But no matter how slow it is, it actually develops. It goes their pace, and they get to where they have to go. The problem is very often the process is not consistent. It is only consistent if the teachers are working with parents. The reason why teachers have to work with parents is that very often teachers do change, parents don't. When a teacher moves on, or when the child moves to the next class and is meeting another teacher, this parent now, if they're having that initial discussion on the growth and development of the child, has to inform this teacher of what was happening before, so that the consistency is there. So the most important thing is just to train kids, especially those with autism, from a tender age on how to accept loss. And I know it's not very easy, but I can see a format where if we have a subject which, like that PSHA, that manages to teach somehow how children can get a loss and then move on, you discover that when you move from their toys and things like that to human beings, a lot of them will understand. Those who will understand in the basic form will understand it in the basic form. Those who understand it in an advanced form will understand in an advanced form. I have a young, not young, another lady who, each time you ask her, where is your dad? She said, he gone to heaven. Gone to heaven. That is the picture that was painted to her. And maybe it was painted because it's a long time ago. And maybe the way it was painted to her is, she might have also witnessed him buried. And then after the burial, they will show pictures of the clouds. And then they'll tell her that, that has been buried. It's going to heaven. And then they'll be relating. A lot of the time, I'm sure she must have experienced other people dying around, and they'll be saying, that one has also gone to heaven. And then her way of accepting grief is that person is not buried, but is buried, but he's gone to heaven. And then they make you know that the heaven is a good place, a comfortable, a place of joy, a place of happiness. And when people know that you are in a place where there's no suffering, it's good, daddy has gone to heaven, that's every time you ask her, where is daddy? It's gone to heaven. And the only reason why we even ask that question is because most of our discussion, when she's talking about things, she'll always mention daddy. And then we ask, then she'll say it's in heaven. So I just thought if we have some educational plan that uses a technique to teach grief, it will enable families and individuals with autism to be able to accept, to understand grief and accept and use the different stages to accept it and be able to live comfortably in life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that. Yeah, it's amazing, and it may be surprising to some individuals to know that some people may grieve objects or articles more than human beings or pets. Yes, I wouldn't judge someone who grieves maybe the loss of a car more than the loss of a loved one, because grief comes with love. So how much you grieve will determine how much you loved that person or how much you loved that particular thing. And also one of the traits of autism is that obsession, that attachment that they have for their particular things, for their toys, or for those that special things of interest. And at times it makes it a bit difficult for us parents or for us caregivers to be able to train them or to teach them that as you have this thing today, it may get broken tomorrow, it may get destroyed at some point, and you will not have to have it anymore. I think, like you said, teaching is very, very important. Educating them from an early age is really vital. And you've already touched several points. My next question. So I would just like to go with I think it's a final question, on one of the final questions on the steps that we can take to help these individuals to cope with this loss. I would like to come with you, Ida, just to find out if you've got any particular steps or tips that we can help to we can use to help autistic individuals cope with loss. It may be the loss of their favorite toy or the loss of anyone or anything that they love.
Um, with the boys losing their dad. First of all, you have to involve the agencies like school, after school clubs, even my social worker. So I inform all of them for them to know what's going on, so that when they get to the clubs, just in case they have a meltdown, they can find out, or and find they can find out what's going on and support them. So you give them a lot of patience, love, and sense of security, because they need that at that time, because they're kind of lost and they don't have any understanding. So you have to be patient with them, and just let them know that everything is going to be okay. Oh my God, I seem. Can you still hear me, Clarice?
Yes, very loud and clear. It's
Yes,
fine.
we can hear you. Just
Yes.
go ahead. That's absolutely
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Albert. Okay, Albert, hold on, move. Okay, give me, soon. I'll soon finish. Yeah. So they were meant to go out today. Sorry, but it was cancelled, so that's why they are home. I thought they would be outside the house. Just hold on, Ollie. Yes. So basically, you have to give them security, support, and patience, and love above all, and just make so you let them know that you will be there for them. Everything will be okay. You have to try to explain to them that these things happen. People do go away and don't come back. It's very, very, very difficult to discuss, and also you don't know how much they are absorbing and understanding, but you still have to do those things for them, maybe eventually they will get it. Yes, that's all I have to say on that.
All right. Thank you so much, Ida, for that. So giving love a lot of support and reassuring them will
Yes.
really, really help them in accepting the loss,
Mhm.
irrespective of which type of loss it is. And thank you once more. I just want to appreciate everyone watching, Nikki and Becky. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a question, just put the question down here for our guest speakers who will be able to answer either now or maybe later after the show. I do understand that this is a burning period for most people, including myself, including Eric. But it's Autism Awareness Week, and this is one of the activities we are doing as far as autism awareness and autism advocacy are concerned, having live or virtual shows on autism and related topics. So if you've got a hot topic about autism that you would like to talk about, get in touch and let's talk. And talking about grief, grief is one of the topics which oftentimes it is regarded as an emotional topic, a sensitive or a taboo topic for people not to talk about. However, grief is an inevitable aspect of human being. At some point in our lives, we will grieve, and if you haven't experienced any form of grief in your life, I bet you will. And surprisingly, maybe to some, I think for the past one year or so, we've all been grieving because we've all been experiencing a lockdown. We've been affected by COVID, whether we've lost a loved one as a result of COVID or we haven't lost a loved one, we have grieved because activities have changed. We had to panic buy, we had to stay at home, our routines had to change, and we've been in a situation where we haven't been able to see our loved ones near or far. So we've all been grieving. We've all gone through those stages of emotions of denial, of anger, fear, at the beginning, we've gone through depression before we are finally accepting. And this also applies to autistic individuals. They do struggle to understand most of the daily routines, not then talk about other things that come and add on to their daily struggles. So you can actually imagine what is happening in their minds at the moment. So, before we round up our discussion today, we've actually learned, especially from what Eric said after he spoke to some therapists and some clinicians, that there's a lack there's a lack somewhere as far as autism and grief are concerned. So, what would be some of the recommendations for supporting individuals on the autism spectrum when it comes to grief or when it comes to the loss of a loved one, or maybe loss as as a result of a separation, or as a result of change in routine or change in school, or their normal activities? Eric, over to you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. When I was discussing with that counselor, and I actually introduced him to your book. I actually introduced it to him to this book, and he was very very impressed with the write up from someone who he thinks other people can use. And then when we discussed the stages of grief, when he looked at the first point of denial, he said that is crucial. And then he says we have to always learn from that, because the reason for denial is because of the shock. He says the shock is very often overwhelming. It is something that if we don't look at, it will be very dangerous. Because the point I got was that when it comes to grief, nobody is a master in it. Nobody is a master in grief. And then he advised that in every situation of grief, we should allow everyone to go through it in their pace. And we should be able to accept how they are going through it. The support we can give, we give the support, but we shouldn't say get over it, because no one will get over it at the same wavelength. I think I lost a dad as well around 2014. I think the way we have grieved it in our family has been very different. Some people, uh, uh, within a year, some people are already fit. But after these years, we have some people who are still finding it as if it is fresh, like yesterday. And that's why we discussed that your second part of anger. He said anger is always because of separation and pain. And then if you discover, we talk about when working with individuals with autism, the pain of separation is too much. That sometimes they're angry with themselves. They always think it's their fault that the thing is lost, the person has died. They always think that it's their fault that that thing has happened. And I think it's not just with autistic people, even us. Sometimes when people die, we think that we are the cause because maybe we were not there, we did not pick a phone call, we did not do one thing or the other. But the point I got from that is when it comes to grief, allow the person to grieve in the language they want to grieve, in the form of communication they want to grieve, in the style they want to grieve. However, be there for them. As a friend, as a parent, be there for them with that support. The support means, what can I do? How can I help you? Do you want to have a walk? Do you want to give them just the pace to grieve with their pace so that somebody can actually get over it and actually accept it rather than trying to cut it short, like just to make the person know that you can't grieve forever. You have to end, it has to end tomorrow. So those were the points I actually got from sharing with a friend who I thought was very experienced with counseling, but had very little to offer when it comes to grief. And he said that is something that we should actually point out to stakeholders, to people we work with, to people who make people who participate in decision making. If we can point out those things to them, they can actually train people to help autistic individuals and other and their families to cope with grief. So I think one of the way forward will be to be able to have that discussion going so that people can be trained to deal with that and will be very comfortable and to talk about it. I so hope that by next year, around this time when we are talking about autism in April during this month, there is some discussion that has gone through in a council, in the neighborhood, in the hospital, so that something is going on. Because I'm going to take it up as well. Because with this, the person I talked to, I said that is something we should try to explore, so that we see how it can make a big picture and then contribute to supporting families and their children with autism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Eric. It's really, really a good thing that you are doing working with other people so that there should definitely be a change. It's often said that no two people's grief is the same, and each person's grief is as unique as their fingerprints. And it also applies to autistic individuals. Their grief is also very, very unique. They may struggle a little bit more than us, but each and every one of us, we do grieve in special ways. So we are discussing autism and topics related to autism, especially this April because it's Autism Awareness Month. And this is one of our activities we are doing as far as autism awareness and autism acceptance are concerned. So we should get conversations going at look for ways to support families, to support parents who have autistic children, and also to be able to support for the individuals to let us know exactly how we can better support them, especially the ones who can communicate very well and they can at least tell us how best to support us to how best to support them as a family, as a friend, as a community. That would be very great. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today and for sharing and also for contributing. Ida, I'm not sure if you're still there. You must have heard sounds or talking in the background. Those were Ida's twin sons. We are talking about autism, and there should not be a reason why we shouldn't have them here with us, because I always say that the presence of our children is enough awareness. There's nothing about autism without autistic individuals. So, and let me see if Ida will be back. She seems to be having network problems. So we are just about to round up our show for today. Ida, are you there? So if not, then Eric, I would just like to have a final word from you before I conclude.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for involving me to this discussion. I think I feel very privileged because it is also a gap, an area that I have to explore as well. Because while I feel very comfortable discussing everything to do with autism and anything to do with autism, when it comes to grief, I'm left hanging. And that is why I had to run across the world to look for every type of expert who has a clue on what we could discuss. Because very often I know that when we have these panels, um, we don't know who is watching.
Yeah.
It's from nobody to anybody. And because of that, you will discover that a lot of people will be there. And I will just wish and pray that if there's somebody out there listening to this discussion and you think you have something to offer, which will be of benefit to our communities, I think from Clarice's link, you can always get to her and then we see how we can get the discussion further. I'm so happy to be with Ida having this discussion and her kids around. It always makes my day because it's all about them. And actually, I feel they have been participating in the discussions that we have had. And then just to conclude, it will be something that us can take with us, that when it comes to grief, everything has been done for the common man like me to be able to deal with grief. If I Google now a grief counselor, I'll just get like 10 million of them waiting to help me. But I'm sure if I have a son with autism and I say, I need a counselor for you, I don't think I'll get one. So the discussion that I'm trying to ask us to have is how to develop a system that will have uh, trained people that can manage grief for families and children with autism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that, and thanks so much for the recommendations. Yes, obviously, this is an area that needs exploring further. And anyone watching, if you wish, if you have further information to add to what our guest speakers have contributed today, that will be very welcome. And I've always had this topic on my mind because we struggled. Obviously, from the book, we struggled when we experienced our loss with our boy. So at the beginning he didn't understand a lot what was happening. He couldn't understand why there was no longer a baby in mommy's tummy, things like that. So one of the things we did was he took part in all the activities, from hospital to church to when he was buried, and later on the visits at the cemetery. So we discovered that actually helped quite a lot. I've actually written that there's a write-up which I've written somewhere. I haven't shared it anywhere, which I've written on how we supported him during our grieving period. And that was during the loss of the baby. And also there have been occasions where he's lost something when he was still a young lad, a young boy with his dummy. We will have dummies all over the house, under the pillows, on the tables, everywhere, to avoid meltdowns in case one of them gets missing. And we have to have chargers everywhere around the house, and different gadgets, different devices, just to make sure. So we support them, or we support him proactively to minimize any meltdowns, or any challenging behavior that will come forth as a result of him not having a preferred gadget or a preferred device. So, working with individuals with autism proactively as well when it comes to issues of loss, maybe an item being lost, it's also a good way to support them. So, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. While loss and grief are often difficult to talk about, it is important to provide education and assurance to our loved ones. They are very, very important. Education, assurance, love, and support. That's what we all need. And when it comes to grief, we treat each individual, treat each person as an individual, and we know that grief is as unique as our fingerprint. So each person grieves differently. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and see you soon for another edition of Let's Give the Voice. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye.